Fridays were supposed to be quiet, the kind of mornings where the world moves slower, coffee tastes stronger, and old men like me pretend retirement isn't so lonely. I was sorting through dusty case files in my study when the phone rang, an unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. "Mr. Brooks, this is Amber Foster, Notary Public. I need you to come in immediately regarding your brother James's estate." Her voice carried that subtle urgency lawyers use when they're holding bad news steady with both hands. My pulse stumbled. "Estate? James, what happened?" "We'll discuss in person," she said. "My office is on Spring Street. I'll text you the address." Then the line went dead. For a long moment, I just sat there, surrounded by framed commendations and the faint tick of the clock, trying to stitch together words that didn't want to connect. James and I hadn't spoken in almost 3 years. The last I'd heard, he'd moved to Florida chasing some real estate dream that probably died with the housing market. Brothers once inseparable, now separated by silence and miles. Childhood forts, late-night confessions, all lost to time and distance. I grabbed my keys and stepped out into the Pasadena heat. The 110 was a river of slow-moving cars, sunlight flashing across windshields. I'd spent decades in traffic like this, chasing justice through Los Angeles courtrooms. Today the drive felt different, heavier. My brother had been 59, healthy, stubborn. "A sudden cardiac event," Amber had said later. My mind tried to fit that phrase onto a man I'd once thought invincible. Amber Foster's office was tucked inside an aging downtown building that smelled faintly of copier toner and lemon polish. She was younger than I expected. Sharp-eyed, composed, the kind of professional who never loses her footing. "Mr. Brooks," she said, standing to shake my hand. "I'm sorry for your loss. Please have a seat." Her tone carried that rehearsed empathy lawyers keep in reserve for bad days. She opened a manila folder. My brother's name was typed neatly across the top. "Your brother passed away last week. Heart failure. It was sudden." The words landed with a dull finality. While I'd been complaining about utility bills and neighborhood noise, James had died alone in some Florida apartment. Guilt threaded through my chest. An old, familiar pain. Amber continued, reading from the document in her hands. "To my brother, Thaddeus Brooks, I leave my entire estate, the Malibu property on Ocean View Drive, valued at $3.1 million, and 2 condominiums in Santa Monica, collectively worth over $1 million. The numbers didn't register at first. My hearing narrowed to the sound of my own breath. I don't understand," I said quietly. We barely spoke. "Are you sure there's no mistake?" "No mistake," she replied. "Your brother was very clear. He also left a note." She turned the page and read aloud. "For the brother who always did the right thing." Those words hit harder than the numbers ever could. For a moment I was back in our childhood home. James grinning after one of his stunts. Me cleaning up the mess before Mother found out. I'd spent my life trying to do the right thing. And even after years of silence, he'd remembered. My throat tightened as I signed the papers she slid toward me. The pen felt weightless, my signature barely legible. At 67, 2 years into retirement and living on a prosecutor's pension, I suddenly owned property worth over $4 million. Amber's professionalism never cracked. "You can access the properties within 2 weeks, once probate clears. The Malibu house is maintained by a management company. The Santa Monica units are rented. They bring steady income." Steady income. The phrase sounded foreign. I'd spent my life locking up thieves and liars. Never one of them. Money had always been something other people chased. Now it was mine. A windfall dropped like a thunderclap from a brother I barely knew anymore. I thanked Amber, shook her hand, and stepped into the late afternoon sun. The air smelled of hot asphalt and sea salt drifting inland. As I drove home, hope crept in, cautious, unfamiliar. My daughter Megan and her husband Arnold had been living with me for months, blaming bad investments for their financial mess. I'd helped quietly, watching my savings evaporate, telling myself that's what fathers do. But now I could truly help. Maybe give them one of the condos. Let them rebuild. Family taking care of family the way it used to be. I rehearsed the words in my head all the way back to Pasadena. James left me something. We're gonna be all right. When my street finally appeared, the sun dipped low, painting everything in gold. My little house with its faded blue shutters looked almost proud again. I parked on the curb instead of the driveway. Some instinct, faint but insistent. Then I heard it. Through the open living room window drifted my daughter's voice. Sharp, anxious, almost hissing. If Dad finds out about our debts, he'll throw us out. We can't let that happen. I froze. The world seemed to tilt slightly off balance. And then another voice, Arnold's, flat, deliberate. He won't find out. We stick to the plan. A cold shiver slid down my spine. I moved closer to the window, crouching behind the overgrown hedges, my heart hammering. Whatever they were planning, it wasn't good. What I heard next turned that golden evening into the beginning of a nightmare. One that would end with my own daughter in handcuffs. The air outside my house hung still, heavy, and too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses on your chest before something breaks. I crouched behind the hedges, branches scratching my arms, the heat of the evening wrapping around me like punishment. Megan's voice carried through the open window, sharp with fear and something else. If Dad finds out about our debts, he'll throw us out, Arnold. We can't let that happen. Debts. My daughter's tone cracked on that word. Arnold's reply came low, controlled, almost bored. He won't find out. We stick to the plan. A pause. Then Megan again, voice trembling. What if he refuses to go? Dad's stubborn. You know him. Then we slip something in his coffee. Sedative. Easy. The words hit me like a blow. I gripped my car keys until the metal bit into my palm. Arnold kept talking, calm, precise, like a man rehearsing a speech. Once he's in the nursing home, no one listens to old people anyway. His house, his assets, all ours through guardianship. Guardianship. The word cut through me like cold steel. They weren't just talking about hiding bills or lying about money. They were planning to drug me, declare me incompetent, and steal everything I'd worked for. The woman who'd once called me daddy was now plotting my disappearance. What about the inheritance? Megan asked suddenly. I could hear her shift in her seat, restless excitement breaking through her fear. That villa and those condos, he said. James left him properties. We have to move fast before he changes his will. So that was it. They knew. They'd been eavesdropping, reading papers they had no right to touch. That's why we do this tomorrow, Arnold said. Get him declared incompetent, transfer everything. The psychiatrist knows the script, depression, memory loss, confusion. Judge signs off within a week. And if someone questions it? Megan's voice wavered. Who? Arnold laughed, dry and cruel. The man's a hermit, a retired prosecutor with no friends. No one's going to fight for him. He was right about one thing. I had let my world shrink. After retirement, I stopped calling old colleagues, stopped answering invitations. My life had grown small, predictable. All I had left was my work ethic, and them, my daughter, the last tether to family. Megan's voice cracked. He's still my father. Arnold's reply was ice. He's an obstacle. That silence afterward was worse than anything they'd said. 1,000 courtroom memories ran through my mind. The faces of liars I'd cross-examined, the hollow justifications I'd heard on the stand. I recognized that same tone in Arnold's voice. Greed wrapped in logic. Evil disguised as reason. I backed away from the window, every movement deliberate, silent. My knees ached as I straightened, my heart pounding like a drum in a closed room. When I reached the car, my hands shook on the steering wheel. I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, staring at the house I'd bought for comfort, now turned into a stage for betrayal. I drove with no destination in mind. The streets of Pasadena blurred past, framed by gold light and old oak trees. The betrayal replayed in my head, their voices looping endlessly. He's an obstacle. Slip something in his coffee. Guardianship. Each phrase layered over the next until they became noise. A sick rhythm pulsing behind my ribs. I found myself pulling into Memorial Park. It was almost empty, just a few joggers and someone walking a dog. I sat on a bench under an oak tree, the weight of what I'd heard pressing down on me. My daughter, the little girl who once drew me birthday cards in crayon, who held my hand during thunderstorms, now plotting to drug me. I'd prosecuted sons for defrauding their parents. I'd seen greed destroy blood ties before, but I never imagined I'd become one of those case files. Eventually, the prosecutor inside me began to surface, methodical, cold, focused. The instincts that built my career didn't vanish with retirement. They just slept. And now they were wide awake. Evidence, that's what mattered. I had none. Just an overheard conversation. No recordings, no witnesses. Any defense attorney would shred it in minutes. Hearsay. Unprovable. I knew what had to be done. Let them act. Let them show me their plan in daylight. Let them reveal every name, every payment, every deceit. Then I'd move. My mind began to catalog, to organize. Recordings, documentation, physical proof. I'd spent 35 years making airtight cases, and this one would be no different. I took out the notepad I always carried and wrote, in slow, deliberate handwriting. Record all future conversations. Document psychiatrist contact, photos, audio, payment trail. Capture drugging attempt, sample, and witness. Coordinate with law enforcement at exact right moment. I tore the page free, folded it, and slid it into my wallet. Felt like loading a bullet. My phone buzzed. I scrolled through contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Stanley Morrison, former colleague and one of the few lawyers I still trusted. He answered on the second ring. Stanley, it's Thaddeus Brooks. I need your help now. I'm being targeted in an active elder fraud conspiracy. Silence. Then his voice sharpened. Who's targeting you? My daughter, I said flatly. He didn't hesitate. Come to my office. 20 minutes. Don't confront them. We'll handle this legally, by the book. As I stood and walked back to my car, the sun dipped lower, shadows stretching long across the park path. The plan was forming, solidifying, sharp as glass. They wanted to drug me, to lock me away and take everything. They'd forgotten one thing. I wasn't just their father. I was a prosecutor. And by tomorrow night, I'd have evidence strong enough to bury them both. The drive to Stanley's office was a blur of headlights and ghosts. Pasadena's calm suburban streets rolled by like memories I didn't want to hold. My hands clenched the steering wheel tight enough for the leather to creak. I'd faced murderers, thieves, fraudsters, people who'd lied under oath and stared at me with dead eyes. But this felt different, colder, closer. This was family. Stanley's office sat on the third floor of a beige stucco building near Colorado Boulevard. Modest, practical, untouched by the city's chaos. The lobby smelled like air conditioning and carpet cleaner. A strange comfort in the middle of my unraveling life. Stanley opened the door before I knocked. He looked almost exactly as I remembered. Sleeves rolled up, dark hair graying at the temples, eyes sharp with that same courtroom focus. But there was something else in his face now. Concern. Thad, he said softly. Tell me everything. I stepped inside, shut the door, and for the next 10 minutes, poured it all out. The inheritance, the overheard conversation, the drugging plot, every poisonous word my daughter and her husband had spoken. Stanley didn't interrupt. He just listened, pen scratching across a yellow legal pad. When I finally stopped, the silence between us was heavier than grief. He set his pen down, exhaled slowly, and leaned back in his chair. Your own daughter, he said, shaking his head. All right, let's keep emotions out of this. We focus on law. What they're planning falls under multiple California statutes. Conspiracy to commit fraud, obtaining property under false pretenses, and elder abuse with intent to defraud. Elder abuse, I repeated quietly. The words tasted like rust. That's what it is, Stanley said. Drugging you to seize your assets qualifies. We can make it airtight, but we need solid evidence. Recordings, financial trail, anything that proves premeditation. He moved to his filing cabinet, sliding open a drawer with practiced ease. From it, he pulled two tiny devices no larger than lighters. Voice-activated recorders, he said. 2-hour battery life. Motion-triggered. Timestamped files. Legal and admissible. California's a one-party consent state. You can record any conversation you're part of. I turned one over in my hand. Light, cold, dangerous in the right hands. And the psychiatrist? I asked. Arnold mentioned paying him $1,500 cash for fake documentation. Stanley nodded grimly. That's bribery of a medical professional, medical fraud if he signs off on false competency reports. Photograph everything. Record the handover if you can. He grabbed his phone, scrolled quickly through contacts, then hit speaker. The line rang twice before a calm, steady voice answered. Detective Chun, Fraud Division. Danielle, it's Morrison, Stanley said. I've got Thaddeus Brooks in my office. Yes, that Brooks. He's the victim in an active elder fraud conspiracy. We need you on this. Her tone shifted immediately, professional but respectful. Mr. Brooks, I remember your cases. Tell me what you know. I summarized everything, keeping it concise, clinical, as if testifying. Chun asked questions like a scalpel cutting through tissue. Timeline, evidence, names, motive. Efficient. Focused. Here's how we proceed, she said finally. Record their conversations tonight. Document any attempt to drug you. If they meet with the psychiatrist tomorrow, capture it. The moment they take action, call 911. I'll have a patrol unit on standby. We'll move as soon as we have proof. Her voice carried the steadiness of someone who'd done this too many times before. What about the psychiatrist's identity? I asked. I'll run background checks tonight, she said. Any local psychiatrist with prior complaints will surface fast. We'll find him before they get there. Then her tone softened just slightly. Mr. Brooks, don't underestimate them. People who cross this line rarely stop halfway. I met Stanley's gaze. They've already underestimated me. When the call ended, Stanley handed me a business card. My cell's on there. Call me the second anything happens, even at midnight. I pocketed the card, tucked the recorders inside my coat. The weight against my chest was both reassurance and reminder. As I stood to leave, Stanley stopped me with one last question. Can you act normal when you go home? I thought about the courtrooms I'd stood in, the lies I'd dissected, the witnesses I'd prepared to fool entire juries. Yes, I said. I can pretend better than they can lie. He nodded once. Then go home, Thad. Let them show their hand. Outside, dusk had started to fall. The world tinted gold and violet. I drove home slowly, mind sharp, heart cold. The recorder in my pocket waited, silent, patient, ready. I parked outside the house. Through the window, I saw the flicker of television light. They were there, my daughter and her husband, laughing at something on the screen, unaware their performance was about to become evidence. I drew one long breath, adjusted my expression in the mirror, the faint smile of a man at peace, with no suspicion, no fear. Then I stepped out of the car, walked up the path, and opened the door. Dad, Megan called, her voice dripping with practiced concern. You were gone so long. We were worried. I smiled faintly, stepping into the warm light of the home that no longer felt like mine. Sorry, I said softly. Had to clear my head. And with that, the trap began to close. By the time the sun rose again, my daughter wouldn't just see her father. She'd see the prosecutor who'd come for her. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air inside the house felt wrong. It was too warm, too staged, like a set built for a performance. My daughter stood near the doorway, eyes wide with artificial concern, and her husband hovered behind her with that same cautious politeness I'd seen in defendants trying to charm a jury. Dad, you were gone for hours, Megan said, forcing a trembling laugh. You didn't answer your phone. We thought that I wandered off? I asked gently, my tone light but deliberate. Her smile faltered. Of course not. We just worry about you. I placed my keys on the table, pretending not to notice Arnold studying me from the corner of his eye. His expression was smooth, unreadable. the mask of a man who believed he'd already won. I had to see Stanley, I said casually. Old colleague. We talked about James, the inheritance, all that. Arnold's brow twitched. Stanley Morrison? The lawyer. I nodded, keeping my voice lazy, unconcerned. Yeah, we worked together for years. He's handling a few formalities. Just paperwork. The shift in Arnold's expression was slight, but I caught it, a flicker of calculation. He was trying to gauge whether I suspected anything. I smiled. He asked about you too, actually. That disarmed them. Megan relaxed and Arnold leaned back slightly, pretending interest. I just handed them comfort, the illusion of safety. Megan moved toward the kitchen, her tone softening. You must be starving. I made dinner, roast chicken, your favorite. The table was already set for 3. They'd expected me, rehearsed this, maybe even argued about how to act when I walked in. I could almost see the outlines of their plan written across their faces. I took my seat, let them serve me, every move deliberate, the calm father unaware he was dining with conspirators. When the first bites passed, I decided to drop the bait. I have some good news, I said, setting my fork down. James left me more than I imagined. A villa in Malibu, 2 condos in Santa Monica. The notary valued everything around $5 million. The lie about the number was intentional, just enough inflation to make their greed pulse faster. The silence that followed was delicious. Megan froze mid-breath. Arnold's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Their eyes met over the table, quick, silent communication sparking between them. $5 million, Megan repeated softly, her voice trembling. I nodded, feigning disbelief. Can you imagine? He remembered me after all these years. That's incredible, Dad, she said. Her tone was sugar-sweet, but I saw the hunger in her eyes. James must have really loved you. For us, Arnold added smoothly, recovering his composure. That kind of money changes everything for the family. I let out a small laugh, warm and fatherly. Exactly. I've been thinking maybe one of those condos could go to you too. Fresh start, you know? That was it. I saw it. The spark of triumph behind Arnold's polite smile. The way Megan's hand brushed his under the table. They thought the game was already over. After dinner, I excused myself to the living room. Need to catch up on the news, I said. They followed, performing normalcy with the enthusiasm of bad actors. I settled into my armchair, unfolded the newspaper, and leaned back. My fingers brushed the bookshelf behind me, the one where I'd hidden the first recorder Stanley had given me. One silent press and it came to life. Arnold moved toward the window, phone in hand. Business call, he murmured, stepping aside. The recorder picked up every word. Dr. Martinez? Arnold Watson. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. confirmed. My father-in-law. You'll evaluate him for competency issues. Provide the documentation we need. $1,500 in cash as agreed. The paper in my hands crinkled under the pressure of my grip. Every word was another nail in their coffin. He hung up and turned back to me, his smile smooth as glass. Everything all right, Thaddeus? I looked up over the top of the newspaper, my expression calm, fatherly. Business thing? I asked, feigning disinterest. Nothing important, he said. Just a call about tomorrow's errands. Megan reappeared, drying her hands on a dish towel. Dad, I scheduled a doctor's appointment for you tomorrow morning. Just routine. You've been forgetting things lately. Her voice was soft, rehearsed, falsely caring. 10 a.m., she added. We'll drive you. I smiled faintly, pretending to search my memory. Oh, right, the checkup. That's thoughtful of you. Inside, I could almost hear my pulse in my ears. Every detail matched their plan exactly. I think I'll turn in early, I said. Long day. Emotional day. Megan leaned in to hug me. The same gesture she'd done 1,000 times as a child, now mechanical, hollow. Sleep well, Dad. Big day tomorrow. I went upstairs slowly, the picture of exhaustion. Behind me, their whispers began again. Too quiet to hear naturally, but the recorder captured all of it. In my room, I locked the door and waited. I heard her footsteps an hour later, gentle on the stairs. A soft knock. "Dad? I brought you chamomile tea. You need rest." When I opened the door, she stood there smiling, steam rising from the cup. But there was something else in the liquid, a faint cloudiness that didn't belong. "You're so thoughtful," I said, taking the cup from her hands. She smiled. "Always, Dad." She turned away, satisfied. I closed the door, locked it again, and set the cup on my desk. The surface shimmered faintly under the light. I took the empty glass bottle I'd prepared earlier and poured half the tea into it. Sealed it tight. Evidence. Chain of custody preserved. The rest went down the drain. When I returned to the bed, I stared at the untouched cup, the weapon my daughter had handed me with a smile. By morning, she'd think I was drugged, helpless, and broken, but she'd never met the version of her father who planned traps for a living. I sat in the dark, staring at the cup on my nightstand. My daughter's gift, poisoned with affection. The surface had gone still, faintly shimmering under the lamplight. The kind of shimmer only chemical residue makes. For a moment I just watched it, not as a father but as a prosecutor. Every detail mattered. Every action needed to be documented, timed, deliberate. The tea looked harmless. That was the point. I picked up the bottle I'd filled with half the liquid and turned it in my hand. Cloudy, pale gold, faint scent of chamomile beneath something else. Heavier, medicinal. I sealed the cap tight, slipped it into a drawer, and noted the time on my phone. 8:14 p.m. Evidence preserved. The rest of the cup I poured carefully down the sink, rinsing the porcelain clean. Then I filled it with tap water, swirling it until it matched the color of weak tea. From the doorway, no one would know the difference. Now came the performance. I left the door open slightly, the way I usually did, then turned off the light and sat on the edge of my bed. Every sound in the house felt amplified. The faint creak of the ceiling, the low hum of the refrigerator downstairs. At 8:27, I heard them talking. Their voices floated up the stairs, soft, cautious, almost giddy. "Can't believe he drank it?" Arnold whispered, laughter creeping into his tone. "I told you," Megan said. "He never suspects anything. He trusts me. Tomorrow morning we'll wake him at 9, take him to Martinez's office. One evaluation, 1,500 cash, and we're done." Their words came clear, clean, recorded perfectly by the device hidden downstairs. They didn't know every syllable was being captured, time-stamped, stored. Every word a confession. I leaned back on the bed, lowering my breathing, pretending to slip into drugged sleep. Moments later, I heard footsteps. The floorboards creaked outside my door. "Is he out?" Arnold whispered. "Give it a few more minutes," Megan replied. "The dosage should keep him unconscious for at least 8 hours." The footsteps retreated. Their confidence was complete. I waited another 5 minutes, counting the seconds, then rose quietly. The house was dim. Television glow flickering from downstairs, shadows breathing along the walls. I moved to my closet and pulled out the second recorder from my jacket pocket. Connected it to my phone via Bluetooth, opened the app Stanley had shown me earlier. The feed came alive in my earbuds. Crystal clear audio from the living room. Arnold's voice filled my ears first. "Once Martinez signs the papers, he's legally incompetent. His word won't matter." "And then?" Megan asked. "Then we file for emergency guardianship. We'll have control of everything within 72 hours. The Malibu house, the condos, all of it." Their laughter was faint, brittle. I'd heard that same sound in interrogation rooms, the nervous triumph of people who believed they'd already escaped justice. I typed a quick message to Stanley. Evidence captured. Drugging attempt confirmed. Physical sample preserved. Appointment with Dr. Martinez. 10 a.m. need address. Inform Detective Chun. The reply came within a minute. Received. Sending recordings to Chun. She'll coordinate morning surveillance. Stay safe. I sat back on the edge of the bed, the phone still glowing faintly in my hand. Downstairs, their conversation grew darker. "If he wakes up early, we tell him it's time for his checkup," Arnold said. Once Martinez gives us that report, he's legally finished. And if the judge asks for proof? Arnold laughed. We show the doctor's letter and mention his forgetfulness. You saw how he couldn't find his car keys last week. It's easy. Judges believe paper, not people. There it was, the cold truth of their plan. Paper over blood. Proof over love. Megan's voice trembled slightly. He's still my father, Arnold. Arnold's tone sharpened. He's a means to an end. You need to stop thinking like a daughter. Silence followed. A silence so deep it hurt. I thought of the little girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder while I read her bedtime stories. The same girl who had now decided I was worth more as an asset than as a man. But I couldn't afford grief yet. Not now. This was evidence, pure, damning, and precise. By morning, they'd walk into a trap so tight no defense attorney could loosen it. The law would see to that. I listened a while longer, long enough to capture every last word. Every detail of their scheme, every reference to money, guardianship, and bribery. Then I sent the files to Detective Chen's encrypted address. Subject line, elder fraud, active conspiracy evidence. My part was done for now. The rest belonged to the night and the ticking clock. I placed the phone beside me and stared out the window. The street outside was quiet, street lamps humming, the faint rustle of leaves. Somewhere beyond those lights, the police would soon take their positions. I lay down fully dressed, eyes open, heart steady. It wasn't fear that kept me awake. It was the knowledge that justice was already moving, silent and inevitable. For 35 years I'd sent people to prison. Tomorrow I'd send my daughter there too. And by the time the sun rose, she would learn what it truly meant to betray a man who once taught her right from wrong. Morning came slow, gray first, then pale gold bleeding through the blinds. I hadn't slept. I'd spent the night listening to the house breathe, every creak and sigh magnified by what I knew was coming. Somewhere beyond the quiet street, Detective Chen's team was already moving into position. 2 unmarked cars, 1 officer on foot, surveillance running on every angle of the property. Invisible eyes watching a family about to implode. At exactly 8:30, footsteps climbed the stairs. Then, a gentle knock. Dad. Megan's voice, too bright, too practiced. Time to wake up. Remember? The doctor's appointment? You said last night you wanted to check your blood pressure. I lay perfectly still for a moment, then forced my voice to sound foggy, uncertain. Appointment? I don't remember saying that. A pause. Then I added weakly, must be getting old. Relief spilled into her tone. That's okay, Dad. Get dressed, all right? I made breakfast. We'll go together. Her footsteps retreated down the hall, and I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes like a man emerging from drugged sleep. I caught my reflection in the mirror. Disheveled, tired, but convincing. Perfect performance. Downstairs, the smell of toast and coffee drifted up. The same coffee she'd once offered with trust and laughter. Now it was part of an act. When I descended the stairs, Arnold stood in the kitchen, leaning casually against the counter. His smile was precise, the kind men wear when they think they've won. Morning, Thaddeus, he said cheerfully. Feeling all right? We made breakfast. You've got a big day ahead. I nodded absently, settling into the chair they'd pulled out for me. Megan poured coffee, careful not to meet my eyes. How'd you sleep? She asked. Like a rock, I said, smiling faintly. Must have been that tea. Worked like a charm. Her hand trembled slightly as she poured cream into her cup. Just enough guilt to notice, not enough to confess. We ate in silence for a few minutes, the clink of silverware the only sound. Arnold broke it first. That inheritance of yours, 5 million, right? That's incredible. You should celebrate once the doctor clears you. Maybe we all go out somewhere nice. Huh. The words dripped with irony. A dinner bought with stolen blood. I nodded slowly. Maybe. After today, I'll probably need a little celebrating. They both smiled, believing I meant the appointment. I meant the arrests. We left the house at 9:45. Arnold insisted I sit in the back seat. More comfortable, he'd said. But I knew it was about control. I didn't argue. I just sat there, hands resting on my knees, watching the world pass by through the tinted glass. Pasadena's neat streets gave way to industrial blocks and cracked sidewalks. The sky hung low, washed-out blue. I caught sight of a gray sedan 3 cars behind us at a stoplight. Detective Chin. Just far enough to be invisible, just close enough to keep me alive. We turned onto a street lined with decaying office buildings. Arnold parked in front of one with a fading sign that read, Med Consulting, 2nd floor. Half the letters were missing. Here we are, he said, stepping out. He opened my door with exaggerated politeness. Careful with the stairs, Thaddeus. Inside, the hallway smelled of mildew and disinfectant. No receptionist. No patients. Just the faint buzz of old fluorescent lights and the sound of my own footsteps echoing. A man appeared from one of the rooms. Mid-50s, nervous eyes, white coat wrinkled at the edges. Mr. Brooks? He asked. I'm Dr. Martinez. Please come in. This won't take long. His gaze flicked toward Arnold and Megan, then away, the silent acknowledgement of someone who already knew this wasn't legitimate. I shuffled forward, the perfect patient, my voice slightly slurred. My daughter said this was just a checkup. Yes, Martinez said quickly. A simple evaluation. Just answer a few questions. For the next 15 minutes, he went through the motions, date, name, simple arithmetic. I answered deliberately slow, hesitating just enough to seem uncertain. Every detail was captured by the recorder hidden in my shirt pocket. Finally, he sat back, scribbling on his clipboard. I'm afraid your father is showing clear signs of cognitive decline, he said to Megan and Arnold, avoiding my eyes. In my professional opinion, supervised care is necessary. Legal guardianship would be appropriate. Arnold's voice dropped low, polite but loaded. We appreciate your honesty, Doctor. We just want to make sure he's safe, and that his finances are protected. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. The white edges caught the fluorescent light like a blade. You'll provide the documentation? Arnold asked. Martinez nodded and reached for the envelope. As agreed. $1,500. The price of a soul. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. One short pulse. The signal. Everything slowed. The envelope passed from Arnold's hand to Martinez's fingers. The bribe completed, the crime sealed. Then the door burst open. Police! Nobody move! Detective Chen's voice cut through the room like thunder. 2 officers followed, weapons drawn, badges flashing. Martinez froze. The envelope fell, cash scattering across the floor. Arnold turned white. What the hell is this? You're under arrest, Chen said, her voice sharp and steady. Conspiracy to commit elder fraud. Attempted administration of a controlled substance. Bribery of a medical professional. She moved forward, cuffs in hand. Arnold tried to step back, but one of the officers grabbed him, twisting his arm. Don't move. Megan stood frozen, eyes wide, lips trembling. Dad? She whispered. I stood slowly, dropping the act entirely. My voice came steady, measured, the voice of a prosecutor addressing a courtroom. I heard you through the window yesterday, Megan. Every word. The drugging. The guardianship. The plan to steal everything I own. Her face crumpled. No, Dad. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said coldly. You plotted to destroy me. Now you'll face what justice truly feels like. As the handcuffs closed around her wrists, I realized justice had finally come home, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss wearing a badge. The sound of the handcuffs clicked through the room. Sharp, metallic, final. I'd heard that sound 1,000 times before in courtrooms and interrogation rooms, but never like this. Never while watching my daughter flinch at the cold bite of steel around her wrists. Arnold cursed, struggling as the officers forced him against the wall. This is insane. We didn't do anything. Everything you did is on tape, Detective Chun said calmly. Audio, video, and a lovely trail of cash. You'll have plenty of time to explain it to a judge. Martinez stood near his desk, hands raised, shaking. His eyes darted between us, desperate for an escape that didn't exist. "I want a lawyer," he said. I didn't know what they were planning." Chen's tone turned to ice. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you took that envelope." She nodded toward an officer. "Bag the cash. Photograph everything." Megan stood frozen, tears beginning to stream down her face. "Dad, please, don't let them take me. You don't understand. Arnold said it would just be temporary until—" I turned to her, my voice low, controlled. The same voice I'd used to cross-examine witnesses who begged for leniency. "Until what, Megan? Until you stole everything I built? Until you left me drugged in a care facility while you sold my home?" Her lip trembled. "I didn't want to." "But you did," I said softly. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. The officers moved efficiently, reading rights, securing evidence. Outside the window, sunlight poured through dusty blinds, catching the floating motes in the air, golden and cruel. Stanley appeared in the doorway then, legal folder in hand, his expression unreadable. He looked at me, then at Megan and Arnold. "It's over," he said. "Detective Chen's team has everything. The evidence is airtight." Arnold glared at him. "You set us up." Stanley didn't even blink. "You set yourselves up when you tried to drug a retired prosecutor." Chun motioned to her officers. "Take them." As they guided Arnold toward the hallway, his arrogance cracked, replaced by something raw fear. But Megan, she didn't fight. She just stood there watching me. Her eyes, the same eyes that once begged for bedtime stories and comfort after nightmares, now filled with confusion, regret, and something worse, realization. They led her past me, her wrists cuffed, tears streaking her cheeks. "Dad," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I wanted to say something, anything, but there are no words for a moment like that. Only the echo of what could have been." When they were gone, the room seemed to exhale. Cash scattered on the floor. The doctor's clipboard, half-filled forms recommending my supervised care. All of it evidence, cold, undeniable. Chun began gathering everything methodically. "We'll process them separately," she said, not looking at me. "Standard interrogation technique. They'll break faster that way. Most people do once they hear their own voices played back." I nodded faintly. I'd seen it happen countless times. But this time, the thought didn't bring satisfaction. Only a strange, hollow ache. Stanley approached, laying a steady hand on my shoulder. "We'll have emergency orders filed by tonight. Your inheritance, your accounts, all protected. You did the right thing, Thad." "Right?" I repeated. "The right thing." The words felt heavy, like they didn't fit in my mouth anymore. Outside, the sound of sirens faded as the patrol cars drove off, carrying what remained of my family. I stood there for a long time, surrounded by the aftermath. The smell of antiseptic, the fallen money, the broken silence. Chun packed her evidence bag, sealing the bottle of tea I'd brought as proof. "You handled this well," she said. "Not everyone could have done what you did." "I've spent my life putting people in cages," I said quietly. "Didn't think I'd end it by locking up my own blood." Her expression softened, just for a second. "Justice doesn't ask who it hurts, Mr. Brooks. It just asks what's right." Maybe she was right, but in that moment I couldn't tell the difference anymore. They drove me to the station to finalize the statement. The ride was silent, the city rolling past, palm trees bending in the wind, children walking to school, people living lives untouched by betrayal. At the precinct, a stenographer recorded every word of my statement. I detailed the inheritance call, the overheard conversation, the doctored tea, the bribe. Every syllable another nail in their case. Every memory another weight pressing on my chest. When it was over, Chun closed the file and nodded. "They'll be arraigned Monday morning. Bail will be high. They won't go far." "Good," I said, but the word came out like an apology. Outside, the sun was setting again. That same amber hue as the day before, when I still believed in family. Stanley walked me to my car. "You did the right thing, Thad." he said again, as if repetition could make it feel true. I know, I answered. It just doesn't feel like it. He sighed. The way old friends do when there's nothing left to fix. It's not supposed to feel good. Justice rarely does. When I finally reached home, the house was silent. No laughter, no voices, just emptiness. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the table where I'd eaten dinner with them last night. The place where betrayal had worn a smile. I'd won. The law had worked. And yet, all I could hear was her voice. He's still my father. Justice had come swiftly. But as night fell over that quiet Pasadena street, I began to wonder if justice and mercy could ever live in the same house. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the street was wrapped in that lonely kind of silence that only comes after storms. The world looked the same. Trees swaying gently, porch lights flickering on one by one, but everything inside me had shifted. The house sat dark and hollow. No movement behind the windows, no voices, no warmth. Just the echo of what used to be a home. I walked in slowly, every step heavy with a mix of exhaustion and something I didn't want to name. The faint scent of Megan's perfume still lingered in the hallway. Lavender, her mother's favorite. The same scent that used to mean comfort now smelled like grief. I set my keys on the counter and stood there for a long time, listening to the emptiness. The clock ticked from the living room, each sound reminding me that time moves forward, whether you're ready or not. The kitchen table was still set for three. 3 plates, 3 forks, 1 family. A lie that had lasted longer than it should have. I sat down in my usual chair, staring at the space across from me where Megan had sat just last night, smiling as she offered me poison tea. Some part of me wanted to believe there'd been hesitation in her heart, that maybe she'd have stopped if Arnold hadn't pushed her. But the recorder had caught her voice, steady and complicit. There were no illusions left to protect. The law had worked exactly as it should. Evidence, arrest, consequence. It was clean, precise, final. But justice doesn't visit without leaving something behind. I poured myself a glass of water, real water this time, untainted, and stared out the kitchen window. Pasadena looked peaceful. Somewhere beyond that calm facade, my daughter was sitting in a holding cell under harsh fluorescent lights, answering questions about how she tried to ruin her father. Arnold would be in another room, probably blaming her to save himself. And Dr. Martinez, his medical license already slipping away like sand through his fingers. 3 people, 3 choices, all connected by greed, and me, the man who caught them. I picked up the phone and started making the calls I'd promised Stanley. First to Amber Foster, the notary. Amber, I said, my voice steady but hollow. I need the will revised immediately. Remove Megan Brooks Watson entirely. List alternate beneficiaries. Charities, legal trusts, anything but family. A pause. Then her soft voice. I'll handle it, Mr. Brooks. And I'm very sorry. So am I. Next, I called the bank. Freeze all accounts linked to the estate until the investigation closes. Every transaction stops now. Then Stanley. File a restraining order. Full protection. They're not to contact me again. He hesitated. Thad, are you sure you don't want to wait? After everything? No, I said quietly. I've waited long enough. When the last call ended, I stood in the doorway of my home office. Stacks of old case files lined the shelves, ghosts of lives I'd helped convict. But tonight they all felt like mirrors. For 35 years I'd believed justice was clean, a straight line between wrong and right. But now I saw the truth. Every victory leaves a scar. Somewhere downtown, my daughter was probably crying into her hands, replaying everything I'd said to her in that office. You did this to yourself. It had sounded righteous at the time. Now it just sounded like punishment spoken by a broken man. I went upstairs, past her empty room, the one she'd filled with boxes when she and Arnold moved in. A photo sat crooked on her dresser, her wedding day. She'd been radiant, glowing in white lace, her arm hooked through mine. I picked it up, thumb tracing the frame's edge. My reflection stared back, older, colder, unrecognizable. The same hand that had walked her down the aisle had now signed the statement that put her behind bars. That's the truth they don't tell you about justice. It doesn't care about blood. It doesn't heal. It just balances the scale no matter what it costs. I returned to the kitchen, poured another glass of water, and sat by the window. The moonlight stretched across the floor, pale and indifferent. Outside, the world went on. Neighbors laughing, cars passing, the faint hum of life continuing without me. Inside, everything had stopped. I thought of James, my brother, the one who'd left me that inheritance with the note. For the brother who always did the right thing. He'd been right about me, I supposed. I'd done the right thing. But sitting there in that empty house, I finally understood something. Doing the right thing doesn't always make you feel right. It makes you alone. The law had restored my estate, my name, my freedom. But it had also taken what little family I had left, traded love for justice, and left me holding the receipt. The house was quiet again, the kind of quiet that presses on the soul. I looked around at the home I'd once built for laughter and found only the sound of my own breathing. 67 years old, retired, vindicated, and completely alone. They say justice is blind, but no one ever warns you how cold her touch can be when she finally finds you. Days passed, but the silence never left. It filled every corner of the house, the hallways, the kitchen, even the spaces where laughter once lived. The kind of silence that doesn't just surround you, it settles on you, like dust on old memories. Each morning I made the same cup of coffee, the same way Megan used to make it. Strong, no sugar. A habit that felt like both a comfort and a punishment. The papers came with headlines that read like someone else's tragedy. Pasadena couple arrested in elder fraud scheme. Doctor implicated in financial exploitation plot. No names at first. Then, a few days later, they appeared Megan's, Arnold's, and mine. Retired prosecutor exposes own daughter in multimillion-dollar fraud case. The neighbors stopped waving when they saw me on my morning walks. Some pitied me, others admired me, but most just didn't know what to say. And maybe that was fair, I didn't either. Justice had been swift. Arnold confessed first, spilling everything once the evidence played back in that small gray interrogation room. Dr. Martinez folded next, his career ending with a single signed statement. And Megan, she said almost nothing. Her lawyer requested leniency, citing emotional manipulation and coercion by her husband. Maybe there was truth in that. Maybe not. The court would decide. I didn't attend the hearing. Stanley offered to go in my place, but I refused. Not out of hatred, but because I couldn't bear to hear my daughter's voice echo through another courtroom. Still, I read the transcript later. When asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Megan said one sentence that cut through me like a blade. He raised me to believe justice mattered more than love, and I guess I proved him right. That night, I sat alone in my living room, reading that line over and over until the words lost meaning. She wasn't wrong. I'd spent a lifetime teaching others that truth comes before comfort, that right and wrong were the only sides worth choosing. But I never realized how cold that world could be until I stood on the winning side and found no one left to stand beside me. The court sentenced Arnold to 12 years. Martinez got 5. Megan, 2 years suspended with probation and mandatory therapy. It should have brought peace. Didn't. The human heart doesn't celebrate when justice wins. It just tries to make sense of the wreckage. Sometimes I'd walk into her old room, untouched since the arrest. Her bookshelf still held the novels she loved as a teenager. The framed graduation photo with me smiling proudly beside her. The kind of smile that comes from a man who still believed love could outlast anything. I'd stand there for minutes, sometimes hours, surrounded by ghosts that didn't know they were dead. Then I'd leave, closing the door softly behind me, as if afraid to wake them. One afternoon, months later, a letter arrived. No return address, but the handwriting stopped my breath. Dad, I don't expect forgiveness. Maybe I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I remember who you were. The man who stayed up with me when I had fevers, who taught me chess, who believed in truth even when it hurt. I hated you for choosing justice over family. Now I see you never really had a choice. When I get out, I won't come back unless you ask me to. But if you ever can, I'll be waiting. Love, Megan. The paper trembled slightly in my hands. No tears came. Not anymore. Only silence. Heavy, endless, and familiar. I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer beside the old recorder. The same one that had captured her betrayal and now held her apology. Proof of two truths: that justice can destroy, and that remorse, however late, still breathes. That night, I sat on the porch, the California sky washed in indigo and orange. The kind of sky that makes you feel small and infinite at once. The neighborhood was quiet. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed and faded. Life kept moving, indifferent, unstoppable. I sipped my coffee, looked at the lights flickering across the hills, and finally whispered to the empty air, "I forgive you, Megan." The words didn't echo. They didn't fix anything. But for the first time in months, the silence lifted just a little. The world didn't change. The past didn't rewrite itself. But maybe that was enough. Maybe forgiveness isn't a grand moment. Maybe it's just an old man sitting in the dark, realizing that justice and love can coexist, as long as you learn to live with their ghosts. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint scent of lavender. And for the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel empty anymore.